Welcome. I'm Bill Wake. We're here working on a calculator that can handle kilt making, and we've done a fair bit. We've got the main calculator screen working. We've worked through most of the pleat calculations, which tell how the fabric gets folded. We've got a couple leftover topics on that, and then we're going to work on some improvements to it. Okay, so the two things I know we have left is one is if you change a field from outside, it doesn't check the constraints. So if a value is fine and changing another field changes that value in a way that makes it not fine, it doesn't put a warning. But if you were to change it directly to the wrong value, to the bad value, it would get a warning. So we need to deal with that. And then while I was testing it, I think after last time's show, I noticed that deleting a digit left me in sort of a weird state that I had an altered hip measure and then couldn't do what I wanted to do. So let me see if I can demonstrate that one. Okay, so I've got it running here. So if we go to pleats, and we'll take this case we know it works pretty well, 20 and 6-inch set. That's the width. Okay, we get 10 pleats of 2 inches each. All right. Now I'd like to change this to 12 and see what the impact is. It should make it a little bigger if I'm sorry, it should make it a little smaller if I still want to come up with 20 for the answer. Now it may not come out exactly and we need to adjust the hip if that's the case. But what I'm worried about is I delete the 0 here. Okay, now it says the hip measure is 6, which is 1 times 6. And if I type my 2, well, it doesn't change the hip measure at that point. And it says, well, you need 1/2-inch pleats if you're going to get 6 inches in the hip. Now, I think it came up last week, and I definitely have wondered about it, but I think we need to work with the original hip measure. So the original hip measure was 20 in this example, but because of the way we changed it, it can only make a pleat that's so wide. You know, if there's a 6 inches allocated for a pleat, you can't have a pleat wider than 6 inches. So we enforce that rule, but it sort of changes the hip, and then the hip is changed when you put the 12 in, it's too late. If I put this back to, well, if I put it back to 20, see, it replaces things. So let's see, there is a way I can do it. I don't know how easily you could do this on an actual phone, but I'll paste the value in directly. Okay, and now I get 1 11/16, which is a bit more than 1.5 inches. 12 of those comes up to about 20. You know, so the calculation part of it is okay, but the intermediate steps are not because of that shifting the hip size. Okay, so that's sort of today's agenda. But what I want to do next is I'd like to switch us from being so much like fill in a bunch of fields. I'd like to make it more visual. And so the first thing is the set. It's the distance from, in this case, a black line to a black line, or yellow to yellow, or whatever. They're all kind of the same. If you go corresponding, you know, they're all set the same distance from each other. In a real tartan pattern, you wouldn't necessarily have that yellow line centered between the black and the red, but the corresponding yellow line on the other side of it would still be the same distance. Okay, so I'd like to let you just enter that number there in the dimension marker thing, and then I'd like to be able to drag that blue marker to indicate how many how many sets used per pleat. In this case, 1.5. So we're going from black to black plus black to red, which is halfway in the middle. All right. And I think this has to be probably by quarters of a pleat. And it should range from 1/2 to 2. I don't think you would have a situation where you go more than two sets to get one pleat. Okay, so I'd like to have that diagram to help you set the tartan up. And then I'd like to have, I think we'll need the original hips as well as sort of the actual hip or the current hip or something. Maybe it's ideal hip and actual hip or something. But I want to say the pleats, and I'm saying how many pleats do you have? And if I drew this right, it should have 9 pleats. If I change that, I want to put a little plus or minus stepper on that. That'll solve some of those problems. Well, no, it won't. I think I still would benefit from a stepper. But that would give you this number of pleats thing. And then on the bottom there, the pleat width, 2 inches, and it gives us gap of 0. Okay, if we have a 6-inch set. Actually, it's if we have one set per pleat. And that's a box pleat, and I want to indicate that somewhere. So I kind of want to make these things much more, well, position them graphically and try and indicate what's going on more. We'll see. That's probably nothing we're going to do today. And then the last thing I want to do is this bottom picture. We just drew it like that. Actually, we drew it with a gap, more like the second one down. And we just left it fixed, but I'd like to make that gap. If it's 0, I want the gap to go away, like in the top one. And if it's a really big gap, I want to, make it show as a big gap. And then if there's the opposite of a gap is overlap, a small overlap is just dealt with. And then a big overlap, you do what's called a military box pleat. I don't know if my picture helped you visualize it well enough, but you still have the pleat on top, and the left side, the pleat goes exactly to the middle, and then the right side, anything that would be overlap goes back under the other pleat, and it can easily be 2 pleats deep. So the current one and another one to the left. I think it may even be 3 pleats deep sometimes, and I don't know that I have to show it exactly, but I want to. I'd like to make it shift as you devote more to it. So maybe I can't go more than 2 pleats deep in my picture, but I'd like to vary it depending on the size. So if you change a number, I'd like to ideally see this animate to go from one to the next, and I think we can define a fairly smooth animation to do that. If I think what I can do is say a large gap is, a 0, and a box plate's a 1/2, and military's a 2 or something, and make it go like that. So, all right, let's see. I got to pause for just a minute. Okay, so let's get to it. So, all right, so validate even on external changes.
I think this is a drywall.
And I guess the other one was watch out for intermediate changes that really, well,
The thing I can see is the yellowing from age ceiling, but it looks like this is
let's say, let's watch out for, well,
yeah.
need
Yeah, that just typically means
to store original
nobody
hip.
knows because it's just another white, right?
Yeah, it's like I can see that this one right here, kind of, but like it's more the texture than the color. But I mean, you can still like.
Okay. I don't know which is easier. Well, original hip might be an easier one to do. Well, let's see what's involved in this. Okay. So this is Pleat Designer. Oh, no, it's probably Pleat View, right? That's kind of where everything happens.
That's pretty damn subtle.
All right, so Okay.
Isn't going to be into a flashlight.
So
No, and they won't.
Like they're going to be
the validator gets called. It's this on-change that's
People are
doing
more
this
forgiving
stuff.
for some reason with textured ceilings. Just ceilings that they don't look at them, I guess. But yeah, I mean,
Well, where is
save a little
that?
bit of money on paint and labor on it by not doing this. But I'm totally up for whatever you want to do, sir.
Okay. Yeah, then I guess maybe I'll have my wife look at one. But yeah, I'll let you know. I mean,
Okay, I know we set these things up. Right, we had 3 changed things going, don't we? Or did it change? Well, it's not plate drawing, it's plate validator. Where did all that go? I'm very puzzled. Because we had something if it was external. Oh, validating text field. That's got to be it. All right. Oh, is field not being used anymore? It is not. Okay, let's take that out. All right. Okay, there's update for external change, update for internal change. Okay. Excuse me. I guess we need to see something go wrong. All right, so here's. All right, can we make a situation go bad? Okay, if we only need 3 pleats, they got to be 7.5 or 7 1/3 inches, 6 2/3 inches. That's too big for a set. So let's change this to 3. Okay, yeah. So notice it's set pleat width to 6. Well, no, that's still legit. Excuse me. Pleat width of 6 is not really acceptable as a pleat, but I don't know if we necessarily warn on it. Let's try this. 18, it naturally takes 2. Okay, 9. Yeah, let's do 3. 3 6 inches. Okay, how else can we get a... What changes something that would do this? Does it make the image smaller but not larger? Yeah, it's I think the reason is, well, I mean, if I make, I think what it's doing is it's saying I can only make the plate 6 inches wide. Right. So let's start off with, let's go back. 20. Okay. If I got 6 inches and I use 6, okay, let's make 1 set per pleat. All right. So it gets 10 and 2. That's a reasonable definite choice there. But if I only do 3 pleats, they'd have to be more than 6 inches to do the job. All right. So I think in that case, it makes them as big as it can and then multiplies and gets the 18. That's like all it can do. Now, but I'm trying to get a case where changing one of these makes one of these illegal. Well, let's delete that. Okay, that's not there. We did work to make it not give errors for these when they're not even active yet. All right. Can we ever make it bigger? Yeah, I think so. Whoops. Okay, so 20. Let's make this 20 times 5/8. No, that's not going to work. Let's make it 1,000. Okay. I keep getting burnt by this. No. Surplus. Yeah. Can you ever? And this is a crazy place. Nobody's got 1,000 pleats. I don't know if I can force it. I mean, it's got pleat width of 0 and a gob of fabric. 3-inch overlap. Okay, which is definitely in military box pleat territory. It's almost taking nothing, a 32nd of an inch, and throwing all the other fabric behind it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this is, maybe this is a non-issue. I don't remember if we had I thought we had something that demonstrated it. So 9 pleats. Okay. Now, can we make somebody, I guess, who can you make bad? All right, let's do 0. No, that still does that. Huh. 5. I don't know. Maybe there's no example of this. I guess we'll come back to it if we need it. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's where this second problem goes wrong. All right, let's start this one over again. Whoops. 20. Okay, so this, if I hit 1, it's going to make the bottom one as wide as possible, which is 6. And then the pleat hip to hip has to be the number of pleats times the width. Excuse me. So it changes the hip to hip size. But once it's changed it, see, this is where I think the original hip would help. If I did 12, if I put the 2 in to make it 12, it still thinks it's hip to hip 6. But really, we would rather have it try and do it with with the original hip size of 20. And then the pleats would be, you know, was it 11/16 or something, but, you know, something plausible. But now we're already at, you know, we're already at a 6-inch hip to hip, which is not ideal. So I think we'll introduce original hip, or maybe I'm thinking maybe it's ideal hip, because it's kind of like, this is what you would do if everything was fine. And if you end up with one that's, you know, within an inch of it, you're like, okay, that combination will work. I don't know if we can demonstrate that. Let's make a 7 and 21. Okay, so 21 with a 7-inch set. That's a third of 7. Okay, it gives us 9 pleats. But we could do, let's do 4 pleats. 5 2/8, 21. Let's see, if I decided to do 5, I'd get 20. And that would be in the range of acceptable. You know, if whatever combination of things, I mean, this one has a horrible gap, so it's probably not a realistic case. Maybe 8. Okay, let's make it 9. Okay, that's getting to be acceptable. 10. 7. So I got dropped down here again. 21. Yeah, okay, this gives me 9. Let's make this 8. Okay. I mean, it might be better, because that gap is so big. It might be better to just say, what if I made the hip 22? And then I'd get a smaller gap, and then maybe if I did 10 pleats, okay, that's a worse gap. But, you know, this is the kind of thing I'm playing around with to do this. Yeah, it doesn't weight. I mean, I think the problem is, well, I think that exacerbates the problem. It's the fact that we're enforcing these, this relationship. It's really these three. Like, set is usually pretty fixed. But we're enforcing the hip equals pleats times pleat width. And I think even if it were coming up close, like you said, 21, but it came up 20, or maybe came up 22, usually it's better to go bigger. You'd be like, oh, can I do better than 22? And you would change something. Well, you're working off a 22 hip now, so it's, you know, unless you specifically change it back to 20, and then it resets everything, because setting the hip to hip is kind of a big deal. You know, it's a big change in terms of these calculations. So I think, you know, a series of moves. Let's see if we can do it. 20, I've got that with there. Okay, if I did 12, yeah, okay, it readjusts it. I don't know if I can. 12 by 2. Okay, well, it changed pleats. Yeah, I just think because it's shifting this over time, it just makes that worse. It would not be as bad if this were doing this. The other one I thought was, you know, if you did the plus minus thing here, you'd never be jumping from 10 to 0. You'd always be going 10 to 9 or 10 to 11 and kind of stepwise moving and get less gap there. But my proposal is, let's track that first hip value and make this almost an output. And maybe even goes in that last category. Okay, so, okay, so let's say store original hip and then calculate pleat/pleat width adjustment. I guess I should use the word or. Using original hip. Okay. Let's see. So where's Pleat Designer? Okay. I think we're going to make one called Ideal Hip. And it's going to drive that initial setting. Is that right? I don't know. It's awfully confusing. Where are these things coming? They're all published. All right. I guess I feel like I've got to show it somehow or you won't know what's going on. All right, let's get a test. Golly, we're gonna break some stuff, I'm pretty sure. Setting hip updates variable output. Okay. I guess this is really adjustable. We changed the name. All right. So actual hip width is pleats times pleat width. Okay, so we'll do something like this. Pleat designer set hips to hip measure. Okay. And now if I say pleats count equals, well, 6-inch sets per pleat 2. Let's make this 1. Gives us 2-inch pleats times 1 divided into 20. We should get 10 2-inch pleats. If we set this to 20, then we should get half as wide. I guess it doesn't need the word value there. Okay, and now oh no, that's still going to work. I guess if we set it to 4 times 6 is more than 20, so it's going to have to adjust. Pleat count should be 4. Pleat width should be 6 inches. So it goes maximum. Yeah, I think that's the right place to show it. Okay, and then the last one, this is the new thing. It's, I don't know what you would call it. Actual hip, resulting hip, adjusted. Hip should be, no, is that right? Hmm. Well, we did one with 1, right? So 1 times 6, it's going to be inches 6. Okay, so the thinking is it, plate count, what am I doing? Number 1. Okay, so I would have 10 2-inch pleats to start with. And then I say, just make it 1 pleat. And it says, okay, well, the biggest pleat I can make is 6 inches. So I'll make a 6-inch pleat. And if I do 1 pleat times 6 inches, you're going to have a 6-inch adjusted hip. All right. I think that captures it. And Pleat Designer has no adjusted hip. Okay. I don't know if it needs to be optional or not. Let's just return. Can I just return something? Value dot number. It'll be inches anyway. 2. Okay. Property replicate not. Yeah. It is computed, I think. Okay, that actually does make sense. And that should fail. Okay, and hopefully this is the test that fails. And okay, so it came up with inches 2 because I hard coded the result. Okay. Now the trickiness. All right, so this is always this times that. All right, so that should be pleat count times pleat width. Okay. Right. Well, okay. We'll put the next case in that shows either of those nil is going to get not adjusted. All right, but this should pass this case. Okay, and then the next case, I guess I call this adjusted. Is nil when pleat count nil. I don't know. I like the order better the other way. Okay, so if I set this to nil, Adjusted hip should be nil. Pleat width. Okay, these two tests should crash. Okay, so adjusted hip is calculated from pleat, count, and width. Yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't be so unreasonable either. I mostly just want it to work smoothly. It is kind of a pity. I mean, we've got this kind of data flow thing going, which means you get instant response when you delete a character or something, and yet that's not really what you're trying to do. That's just a step on the way. So I don't know, but I think this part is fine. That we calculate pleat width, adjusted hip. All right, now we can show it, and like you say, that's probably belongs down in this last section. Okay, so let's do this. Measurement, hip size. And I kind of like it. Well, let's see what we get. All right, now adjusted hip size 20. Well, adjusted hip size 6. Okay, yeah, I think that's accurate for what we're doing so far. Turning it to 1 got it down to a 6, and then once you get that, it's going to adjust it from a 6-inch hip. Now, I don't think it's dramatic enough. Should it be hidden if adjusted is the same as original? Yeah, there's something that's got to go on there. I mean, it I mean, maybe that's. Well, let's make it. I wonder if I make it bold, if and I don't know. Maybe it's just red or a warning color like an orange. Kind of a warning color. Whoops. Um, I don't get any quality for that. Okay. Yeah. I really want it to stand out though that something's, I mean, that really is a consequential thing. And we probably should be doing stuff for the gaps too. Like if they're too big, it should make them highlighted as well. All right, but if hip to hip equals nil, or adjusted hip equals nil, I guess we're going to say it's not adjusted because there's no computation yet. Otherwise, we're going to return hip to hip equals adjusted hip. Okay. Adjusted hip size. Well, that's a little wimpy. Is it a problem? It's not a full blown. Yeah. I mean, maybe this is. Maybe it just deserves the same treatment we did the other for the message stuff. Validator positive. Well, it's not a validating text field, so that's kind of right out. Well, let's try a red and just see if that registers okay. The orange is a little wimpy. I mean, let's also make it bold. Well, that certainly comes through. However, one slight problem. Why is it red? Hip was adjusted. Let me just check these. I wonder if they're off just a gazillionth of an inch. Why should that be? Yeah, it shouldn't be orange if it hasn't changed. I only want it to be a warning if it has. Okay, so right now it's a question mark, which is fine. Still a question mark, and now it should change to black. Okay, number 20, number 20. All right, what's going on? Hip tip is not nil. Adjusted hip is not nil. Am I backwards? I am. Okay. Unbelievable. Whoops. If they're not the same, then it was adjusted. Okay, but if I change this to 3. Oh. Okay. We don't have original hip yet. I think that's the problem. Okay, let me put a test for this. No, I don't think we can trigger it. This is just helpful to us. All right, I think, oh, we're going to have to change a series of tests. Okay. So because I want some, instead of hip to hip rear, let's change this name first. I think this is ideal or intended. We'll take this off. They kind of know that. Okay, I think everything should be passing at this point. Something else happened in there. Okay. What's gonna happen? I think anywhere I set hip to hip is wrong. So anywhere we're looking at hip measure is a candidate for being wrong. Okay. Hip set, but set error. Okay, that's fine. I guess it's only hip, pleat, and pleat, pleat width and pleat count are going to change the hip measure. All right, let me change this name. I think that will clarify it. I think it will help anyway. This is ideal hip. Okay, so let's look at these. Ideal hip. Okay. Yeah. So we set ideal hip to 20, and then I'd want ideal hip to be unchanged, but adjusted hip should change. Okay, now this one, ideal hip 20, set 5, 10 pleats. Okay, pleat width is 2. Hip doesn't change. Okay, here's one that's changing it. Ideal hip stays 20. Adjusted hip goes to 12. Okay, we should get a handful of failures. Right and right. Okay. So let's go in the code here. So now we want to find out who sets ideal hip. Now it's okay to edit it directly. That's acceptable. Hip was adjusted. Okay. Right. Ideal hip. Let's make this. Let's take this out, I guess. Okay, so this is the case where the pleat is greater than the required pleat size is bigger than we've allocated for it. So we're just going to, we did adjust the hip, but I think now adjusted hip is always this. So there's no problem there. Okay, so possible pleat width, ideal hip divided by pleat count. That should be the same. Okay. So we're always going back to the ideal hip. Okay, let's find anybody else changing ideal hip. This is changing pleat width, same thing. Okay. All right. Only adjust ideal hip when pleat count or width changes. Sorry. Adjusted hip. Ideal hip stays unchanged. All right, let's make sure it works the way we want it to. Now, the test case that started us here was deleting that 0 off the 10, so 20 and 6. And say, what if we did 12 pleats instead? Okay, so I'm going to delete this. Adjusted hip size should go down to 6. Ideal hip size stays the same. And if I make it 12, it should go back to 20. Okay. And 1 11/16 is a little more than 1.5, which sounds about right. Overlap 4/8. So 12 is not a bad one. Let's see, can we get an ideal hip bigger? Let's take a case. Let's take an odd number case. I think that might make something interesting. Okay. Oops. Keep doing that one. All right. So ideal hip 21 set 6. So we can't do 2-inch pleats. We have to do the adjusted pleats that are down like that. They've got an 1/8 inch overlap, so that's pretty darn good. If we did 10, we get. Oh, we can still reach it. 6, 4. How would we ever get one where it's bigger? Well, 11, but if I made this 2, okay, that's not bad. Okay, and the reasoning here, there's actually some preference for an odd number of pleats with this kind of pleat, the box pleat. So it sort of, it sets up a nice look that you're, because there's an odd number, there is a middle pleat, and that matches a line that's on the front of the kilt. I think the deal is, if nothing else, it looks symmetrical across your butt. So they do kind of prefer that, and they might tolerate an inch growth in the hip, in order to get that. You know, that's kind of the toss up they're making on that. Okay. I think this is better. I'm a little worried that you're still going to be a little confused that these are separated physically, but the red definitely highlights that there's an issue. Now, you can decide it's okay, but it's definitely calling your attention to it. The fabric, now, I could see the same thing on gap, that let's try and get a gap that's a weird size. A 1 4/8 inch gap, way too large. All right, we've said it's too large down here, but it definitely would be nice to call your attention to it. A gap that's more than, I think it's an 1/8 or a 1/4 inch. Like there's a line. I don't know where we drew the line for this box plate with too large gap. But there is definitely a line. Okay. But I think we've covered our cases. Mostly it seems accurate. 72 pleats of practically nothing. I mean, if you increase the number of pleats, you can't make it bigger. It always just trims the width down. But maybe the width, excuse me, making the width, changing the width makes it an issue. So if I did 1, well, what did I lose there? 72. One. Oh no, I wasn't expecting that. Oh, I guess I should be expecting that. If I make the pleat width 1, I go back to the original size and say I really would like it to be 21 inches. What can you do? Well, I'll adjust the number of pleats. Okay, so if you adjust pleat width, it may force pleats to a new number. If you adjust pleats, it may change pleat width, and either one can cause adjusted hip size to change. Okay. Well, did I get that checked in? Yes, I did. All right. Store original hip, calculate pleat width using it. We did those. All right, check out developer keyboards. That sounded like that was a UI kit thing, so we're going to let that go. This message value too large. So if we did 7, value too large. Yeah, I think so. Value too large is not bad. I'm gonna let that go. We may need to adjust some language, but I think I'll let my 1 to possibly 3 users be the ones to tell me this. All right. Now, I think we're back to kind of formatting and expressions and stuff like that. So I'm going to bring in the stuff we talked about today. So let's make... the other one is, I don't think title is pulling its weight. Maybe I'll let somebody tell me they want that back. Okay. But I don't think it's there. All right. So let's remove title from Pleats page. And then we want to make pleat width drawing adjustable. Ideally animated. Make a tartan drawing for set and sets per pleat. Make a pleat drawing for original hip and count. And I don't know, we may want to put the both of those there. We got the gap. Total fabric, I don't know. It's one of those, like, the reaction was, oh, that's kind of interesting, but not clear to them that that's what they need. So I'm not super sure about that one. Okay. Removing title sounds very easy, so let's do that. All right, that's on Pleat Designer tests. I don't even know if we have a test for title. It's so simple. Oh, it's called notes. I see it there. Yeah, that's the only one. Okay, let's get rid of it here. Now, notes here. Somebody's got to be referencing it. Okay. See if there were any tests or others. All right, and we'll just take a quick run. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think this is a good time for a break. Let's take 3 or 4 minutes and we'll come back and start these more graphical ones. And I'll warn you, depending on user feedback, it may be that the graphical one is too confusing and we pull back the original. I guess I'll take that chance. I think the drawing is going to stay no matter what, so we'll keep that. All right, so see you in 3 or 4 minutes. Welcome back. Okay, MudShark666 just asked, should adjust to be grayed out like gap in fabric when there is no value? So you can see here, these two are grayed out. This one is black text. And that's really because we're overriding that same property. If hip was adjusted red or black, we can... Well, I'm wondering if we could use disabled instead. And I think that might even be true here. Let's see, disabled if designer needs required values. Okay, and I think I'm even going to take this out. I'm hoping it'll gray out a disabled control. I don't know that it does. No, it does not. Okay, and there's no point. They only are output fields, so there's not any interaction with them. Okay. Well, my second approach... is nil, then color gray, else, and I'm going to parenthesize it just to emphasize. Yeah, I'll accept that. Okay. Okay. And I suppose we should test the rest. That's the same. That is not. Okay. I don't know. I've gotten to like this. I don't think it's going to care for that formatting, but that's... Okay. All right. Yeah. I don't know if... I mean, honestly, this whole thing probably should be that. I forget the way you do this. It's a... Oh, what do I call that? Let's see. This is, it's like a, what do you call those? I've probably done it somewhere. Where's our calculator? Button style. Yeah, this is not a button style, but it's a something. Oh, golly. Yeah. Modifier, that was it. View modifier. Okay. Okay, so this is move modifier, and then it's got to take a init. Is that right? I think I can give it an init because I got 2 bits of information I'm passing in. I need to know, well, I need to know the adjusted value and a Boolean. Adjusted hip is a value question mark, and hip which is adjusted is a Boolean. Thought it would ask me for if I wanted variables for that. Okay. Then we're going to take our content. Well, let's call it dot. We'll see if this works before I clean it up more. Oh, I left their stuff. Okay. Should run that instead. Okay, that seems good. Okay, they're the same. Okay. And not the same. Okay, so all three cases seem to be covered. Make sure that bold. Yeah. Okay. And that. And there's another way to do it. Let's. Okay, whether that's ideal. Whoops. Is that what we're doing? I'm not doing it right. Extension. Oh, some? Okay, and now I can say this. Okay. Oh. View modifier conform to view. Ugh. Well, that's kind of what they did there. Extension text. Custom text. Um. Okay, function. Oh, it's some view. Okay. Oh, modifier of that. Okay. And we still haven't simplified it yet. 46. All right. 3. Okay, so that was the red, the black, and the gray. Okay. Okay, so start black, but if you find out there's no values, turn it to gray. Otherwise, if it was adjusted, turn it to red. Okay, the gray is fine. The black is fine. Whoa, what was that? Result can't be determined. Okay, I guess I can accept that. It's a little... Yeah, I think that's okay. Yeah. Okay. Alrighty, so plate drawing for original hip and count. This is the one I want to start with. We did so much. It took some doing to get there originally, but I think we got the idea now. All right, so this is pleat drawing, I think. Let's just shut out all these. Okay. So I did play around a little with this, I don't know, a week or two ago off over the weekend. Definitely not this past weekend. All right. What we have is the box pleat shape. Okay. So these moves and add lines, they're the ones that are drawing across and then back up and then across and down and back across. That's those. The dimension line draws a two-headed arrow and two vertical lines. Okay. And then double arrow draws horizontal lines with arrowheads. And I think, yeah, somebody checks if there's not enough room to draw the arrowheads, it just returns the line. Okay. And then horizontal line and vertical line. And then the pleat itself is composed of all this together. All right, let's go find it. Okay, so we used to have the text 2 inches there. It got confusing because it wasn't 2 inches anymore. But I think it should be pulling that from it should be given that value, the pleat. Well, it is with pleat gap. Where's that coming from? Where's the preview? Okay, so that's more of a coordinate units. It's not the actual inches of the pleat. Well, it's nice enough to have coordinates there, but I'd like it scaled. Okay. Well, what I'm thinking is you should be passing me, I don't know, the gap could be negative even. I don't know that I need to adjust the pleat distance, but I'd like to know its value. Where's this called? No, wait a minute. You would think pleat view must call it. Oh, there's pleat view. Okay. With a gap of 40. Well, the gap has to be less than the pleat fabric, which is set times sets per pleat. If I gave you gap or overlap, all right, let's turn that on. Where is that? Well, I think if you told me the pleat, okay, yeah, I put in a knife pleat. We haven't dealt with that one yet. I guess maybe we should, but not. It's a different animal than the other one. So all you define is the pleat width. You don't have to worry about a gap. So it's just kind of a different thing. Like if this said pleat : 2 inches, that'd be fine. That'd be good. All right, so let's say you're going to tell me pleat text is going to be a string, and then gap text is a string. So I'm pushing it outside the drawing to decide what that is. And we're going to break some people. There's only one caller. Okay. And then, well, let's go look at this. Where is... we should see formatted somewhere here. Yeah. Formatted inches. Okay. Yeah, we want to do this sort of thing. All right. So if I call this with pleat text, and I want the pleat width. Okay, designer.pleat-width. Dot formatted. And the gap is okay. Let's see. This will need an example too. Now, what's your problem? Pleat text, pleat gap. Oh, I messed up something. Did I draw the right one? Box pleat. Okay. Pleat text, gap text. Ugh. Okay. I think I called it format optional. Yeah. I can't believe that's 131. All right. And that's this one I wanted. Okay. Now I want the pleat to say the pleat text. And the gap to say the gap text. Now, well, I think that's a step forward. Okay, so make box pleat drawing know the text for pleat and gap. Now, this is exactly where so we got this range of things we want to draw. And that's where I'm not so sure what to do. I mean, I know if it's a small gap, although I just lost the value, so I'd have to have somebody tell me. I mean, really, it's the gap. It's the gap divided by the pleat fabric. No, by the pleat width. It tells me the proportion it should be. Okay, so, what's the right way to do this? Well, I guess I want to repurpose that gap. Right now we got coordinates. So 50 means leave a 50 pixel block there. But I also have the coordinates here. This was 200. So I just by default took, a 25% gap. But I think if your gap were expressed as the proportion of your gap divided by your pleat width, then you could multiply that by the pleat pixels, and that would tell you how big to make that. So if you told me, I guess you want to give me a 0 to 1 kind of range number, how big your gap is. All right, let's make our drawing do that. And I'm not test driving this drawing stuff. I'll make sure, but so I would like this to be, well, I want it to be something I can visually see. If it's 50, if it's a third, well, let's just say a quarter. Okay. Now it's interpreting it that way. Let's go up here. The gap, well, I really want to do designer.gap divided by designer.width, pleat width. Do I need bangs? Oh, I don't have a divide? Now I think I'm going to get some problem with the nils. Okay. Yeah. I think it's going to blow up because ideal hip is not defined. Yep. We had something else. It was designer dot absolute gap. No. Yeah, right. Divided by 2. What is going on? How can I get best get from there to there? Well, let's make a gap ratio. Pleat designer. It's tests. Oops. Okay, so okay. Let's put this in here. And this is going to be the gap 1.5 divided by the pleat width of 3. Okay, and that should fail to build because we don't have a gap ratio. Okay, and so we want gap dot as double divided by pleat fabric. No, pleat width as double. But if gap equals nil, whoops, or pleat width equals nil, return 0. Okay, let's add a test for that too. Settings with nil. Okay, so gap ratio should be 0. One should pass, one should fail. That was not a good sign, what was that? Let's run just these. Okay, now the pleat view should be calling it with the gap ratio. Okay. Okay, that one came out fine. If I do 12, oh, minus 4/8. Okay, we're gonna have to deal with that one. Let's do 8. 6/8. I don't see it. All right, yeah, we got to make our drawing do the right thing. Okay. So drawing, okay. Right now it takes gap divided by 2. This has to be pleat times gap. So gap, this is really a gap ratio. Yeah, okay. With it's not good to draw negatives. I mean, we know negative gaps are really overlaps. So, okay. But positive gaps are okay. Where did gap go? Right. So gap is, I really should change this name to gap ratio. Okay. So I don't mind saying pleat times gap ratio every time gap comes up. Why is it only coming up once? Move to the left, add the first line, add the second line, add the pleat. Oh, there it is. Oh, this is where I should be using this thing. Does that look right? Pleat, a gap of 1/8 of an inch. Oh, I don't know what I put my. Right, that's not 0.25. That's a 1/16 of 2 inches. Oh, that's looking good. And it's so small we don't get our dimension lines. Yeah. Let's try this again. We'll make this 8. Too much gap. 9 should be a smaller gap, but still too large. Oh, maybe it's just a gap. Okay, 5/16, less than half an inch. I'm happy. All right, let's change that back to 8. I don't know. Does it animate? It shouldn't. Something's wrong there. The gap looks about right to me, though. And that's about 3/4. Something on the dimension line. But is it animating? I thought I have to say with animation somewhere. Maybe I do. It was kind of a fast transition. Where would I say that? Well, I don't mind it. I mean, it's all right. Yeah, I mean, you see it change at least. Okay. I think that's pretty good progress. Yeah. Yeah, measure line is something's funny there. Like, well, why is it not drawing with 6/8? That seems like a plenty of room. Okay, but I think if you even without the dimension line, I think you are pretty good here. All right, now we got to deal with the overlap. Okay. Now, line's probably still using the gap ratio. Oh, you're right. With pleat. This one, okay, dimension line frame width is gap. Oh, but this is ratio, right? This should be ratio too. Okay, that's more like it. And if my example used a bigger number, yeah, I got room for those. Okay. Okay, good. Was that all I did? Rename. Okay, so if it's, let's get the 0 case, make sure that one's all right. 20. Gap 0. I'm going to live with the text of that. And instructs them out of the vertical position of the gap edges. Yeah. I want something to, basically, I want the y-axis value to rise the more overlap there is on this initial line. And maybe he's okay starting in the same place. Like right now, it just starts horizontally on the bottom. So maybe he can start at the bottom as well. Is this the same drawing? Well, it sort of is. I mean, it feels parameterized by gap. So I think we've dealt with the left-hand side fairly well. The gap shows bigger when it's bigger and 0 when it's 0, and that's good. The overlap, though, if it's less than 0, the target position shouldn't be the middle line. It should be the bottom line. So I think overlaps. Well, maybe that's the height. Okay, so let's give it. He gets to know these things. So, all right. So this is an overlap. Yeah, something like that. And if gap ratio is, well, I have to negate. All right, so this is the move. I guess it's this add line that's risky. If it's less than zero, if the gap ratio is less than zero, let's just do it that way. If gap ratio is less than zero, do something else, do this. And I think this is one of the two critical pieces for this drawing. Okay, so in this case, the first line always targets the midpoint, mid X. All right, sorry. His horizontal goal, I think it's a little bit cheating, but for the military box pleat, it's always half the pleat. I think if we did the same and show a little overlap, even though it's not really identically half a pleat, I think that's okay. It's more directional than exact. Nobody's going to come out there with a ruler and go, oh, wait. And in reality, when they're doing this, they don't even worry about like how much fabric goes underneath. It's like they get the width right and they get the amount showing to the next one. Right. Well, then, I'm sorry. On the military box pleat, you got that pleat on top. There's going to be another pleat on top next to it, and the far right line's y coordinate here is really corresponds to the indent on that first one, and the next drawing would be back towards the pleat, so there's almost no gap to speak of at this point between the two triangles that make up pleats. Okay, so his y, I think we'll just make that mid. Okay, so x, go to mid. And then y, well, these things are so confusing. They draw them upside down. God knows why. You spend all that time learning, 0, 0 is in the center and, positive over in the quadrant 1 and all that stuff. And they've flipped the y-axis on you. Okay, so y dot mid max y. So we move from here. Am I doing the right one? I'm not. Golly. Okay, let's let that draw. Okay. Okay, I think it's this line from X min to, wait a minute. Oh, that's this line. Okay, yeah, that's the one that's varying, isn't it? It's this first line. Okay, so this one, if gap ratio is, well, let's say greater than or equal to 0. Let's do this case first. Okay. Oh, the move's okay. Yeah. All right. So let's take this and vary it. All right. Move to X is mid. Okay. That's going to be fine. Y. Oh, some horrible function. Okay. Let's take minus. Well, okay, let's do this first. I don't think it's quite right. Okay. Let's put another case in our preview. Oh, where was that one? Dimension line. Okay, that's kind of looking good. All right. And now, okay. Our text should be overlap. Okay, I'm not going to worry about the overlap just yet. I don't know. This feels much less like TDD, doesn't it? Like it isn't. All right, so the overlap, the gap ratio is the gap divided by the pleat. Well, in this case, the gap could be twice as large as the pleat. Okay. I don't know if I'm doing this. Let's see. I think I'm doing it to a third of the box. No, let's see what we're doing. Okay, so we're doing plus or minus. We're doing a quarter. I don't know. It looks more like a third to my eye, but so the max we can go backwards. If we got -1, we'd be drawing it at the start of the dimension line, the pleat dimension line, because the gap would be equal to the pleat, but the overlap would be equal to the pleat at that point. And so -2 is feasible. All right, okay, so that line is okay. All right, so that's the first line. There's the second line going up. Here's the pleat itself. Here's the line going down. And then the one to the exit. Okay. So if ratio greater or equal to 0, do this. Else, do something else. Okay. Gap ratio. Okay, so this one is still drawing. Okay. Add line. So it's not the height, it's really the bottom, it's really the X point. Okay, so we want pleat times minus gap ratio. And let's make this thing military pleat. So let's make this ratio noticeably bigger. Well, here's -1. Should be equal. Oh, something's wrong. (0.5) looks good for that thing. 1. No, gap ratio. If it's 0, we don't want to go up at all. If it's -1, we don't want to be up at the top. What do we get there? -1. Why is that not going up at all? -0.9 goes up slightly. -0.1 goes up all the way. And that's not right. I need to move. Well, I got two things going on. I thought I was addressing the right side leg, but I'm really got to fix this one. I think my gap ratio, I think it should be doing like 1 minus, because I want to scale it though. If gap ratio is -3, he should still only be like right there. That's really excessive. I feel like I got to adjust gap ratio. I think I can do that though. Let's make. Oh yeah, there's flipped. You can flip your Y's. Let's define overlap ratio. And that's still not going to be right. I think I need 2 different answers for 2 different situations, right? If it's all right, we'll come back. If the value is 0, it should be down here. If it's -1, it should be maybe up here. If it's -2, it definitely shouldn't go up any higher. All right, so I need a let's call it vertical adjustment or vertical target. Vertical height. No, this is left fold height. Okay. And ideally he is, well, if it's 0, it's 0. if it's 1 or bigger, I think it should be about 0.8. All right, so let let overlap ratio equals absolute value of gap ratio. Okay, and then if overlap ratio is greater than I'm more getting a feel for this than really trusting it. Okay. And then I think we're going to say the height is that. I don't know the rectangle max y though. I guess I'm going to have to return overlap ratio. Okay. So now this should be okay. And if I change this, no, minus 0.1 should just be barely up there. Why is that not? It's this flipped thing again. Oh my goodness. And actually that's the left fold height times that. I want it to be a number 0 to 1. I think I want this. Yeah. Okay. That's minus 0.1. Let's do minus 1. 1. Minus 2 should be the same. I'm going to ignore that line because I'm not sure what he's up to, but minus 0.3. Minus 0.5. Yeah. Okay. I think that's about right. All right. Now this x-axis thing. Let's go to that one. Oops, drawing. All right. So the x-axis on this line. Okay. Then I've got to do something. All right. If erect mid-x plus pleat times gap ratio divided by 2. I don't think that part's right. I think this, because we're trying to go to the left, this should be the other way. There we go. All right. And I don't think we want to divide. I think I want to do the same kind of thing here. So this is var right fold x. Okay. I don't know that we need to divide it by 2. I'm not calling it, am I? Oops. Stop. I don't know what undo is, but it's not whatever I just did. Okay. Let's get right fold x in here. And I think he's minus right fold x. All right. Plate times minus gap ratio. I don't think that's helping anything. Okay, and this example is minus 0.8. I think I want like minus 2. Right, so he's too much. Oops, minus 1. Yeah, that's about as far as we want to go. Okay. And then, okay, so let's peg that to minus 1. X is greater than 1.0. X equals 1.0. Okay, I stopped. Okay, minus 1, that seems wrong. We're only affecting the 1. What did I do? The pleat. Okay, that's sort of the pixels. Times minus 1 is pleat times 1. So it should be mid minus 1. X minus right fold x. I don't think I've switched the signs. It's like I'm not I'm not getting any changes. That's worrisome. Okay. Wow, what's going on? This is... Sorry, remove the -1 gap ratio, -1. So this one I would have thought would go to here. Actually, even to here. I don't know why it doesn't seem to be changing anything. All right, I don't know about the negation and all that. I'm confusing myself, but I definitely want to shift left. So I'm thinking 2 times that value. How much do I want to go? Well, I want to go to 0 means I'm in the middle, which seems to be what I'm getting. And I want to go at least... I'm not sure. Okay, if I take the pleat, which is the width, 200 pixels times minus gap ratio times 1 is 200. And then if x is greater than 1, well, whoops, I don't care about x. If gap ratio, let's do it like this. If gap ratio is less than -1, return -1. Return that. Okay. That seems better. Let's play with a range of values here. Okay, -1. -2 should be the same. Oops, -2. -5. Oops. -5. Why are you not? -2. What just happened? Okay, -1, -2. Why are you different? 0. -0.1. That's annoying. Maybe it's not impossible, but it's annoying. 2. 4, 5. Well, 0.5. That ratio's not quite right there, I don't think. Because if the overlap is 1/2, and the pleat's 2 inches, that says the overlap is 1 inch. Now maybe the angles are just a little wrong or something like that. That's not good. Why is -2? I don't understand why -2 is not doing its thing. If the gap ratio is less than -1, so -2 is less than -1, it should return -1. All right, well, yeah, I don't know what, well, this will be where we stop. We've got something good enough we can critique it, and I think we've almost got the military pleat formatting correctly. We may need a little more adjustment because of the speed at which it the right hand fold moves towards the left. It may be moving too fast, I think, but at any rate, it's plausible. So we'll pick up there tomorrow, 2 to 4:30 Eastern time, or 6 to 8:30 p.m. UTC. Thanks so much for joining today. I'm glad we're making progress on this. It seems to be going faster than the last time we were doing the graphic stuff, so that's a good sign. All right, have a good evening. Take care. Bye-bye.